The following program is brought to you in living color.
Hi, I'm Tony Figueroa, and welcome to another edition of This Week in TV History. Now, you can read my blog, childhoodtelevision.blogspot.com, or you can check me out on TV Confidential, a radio talk show about television. My good friend Ed Robertson hosts that show. He has both me and my wife, Donna Allen Figueroa, on. Together, we talk about TV history. We get to interview people who have been involved in the history of television, especially the television that we grew up with and love. Sometimes it's people in front of the camera, sometimes it's people behind the camera. We got a lot of stuff on the horizon, so please listen to the show. This week, how do you set a tone for something so exciting? Well, first, it's not easy being green. So let's start. It's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to make the Muppets for the Muppet Show tonight. It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to get things started. Why don't we get things started? Yeah, the Muppet Show first aired in September of 1976. Jim Henson, of course, the creator. Wow, such an amazing legacy. It's hard to believe that he's been gone for over 30 years. He brought us the Muppets and the Muppet Show. Jim Henson worked on Sesame Street. He was part of that team that brought Sesame Street to life. That premiered in 1969, and he was at a point where he really did not want to be known just for somebody who did children's programming. So he did a couple of specials, and those specials include the Muppets Valentine Show in 1974. There was also in 1975, the Muppet Show, Sex and Violence. Jim Henson did a couple other TV specials, but he also was involved with the very first season of SNL. Now, that relationship did not last over a couple of different creative differences, but he learned a lot. He learned how to do a television show. He learned a lot from that, just the changes and how to get that weekly show off the ground. And also very important for the success of the Muppet Show, through Saturday Night Live, he made a lot of industry contacts. Many of these industry contacts would wind up being guest stars on the Muppet Show. The guest star was very important. They were often introduced right at the beginning. So I do have a short list of the Muppet Show guest stars. Yes, I'm reading notes. So Steve Martin, Harvey Korman, Rita Moreno, who got an Emmy for her performance for a variety show, Dom DeLuise, Ethel Merman, Don Knotts, Vincent Price. Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte actually sang the Banana Boat song on the Muppet Show, and did share with Fozzie Bear that this was the very first time that he sang the song on television. Most people thought that he sang it on TV all the time. John Cleese, we have. Roger Moore, who was very much James Bond at that particular point in his career. Mark Hamill appeared as both Mark Hamill and Luke Skywalker. That was right after Empire Strikes Back and before Revenge of the Jedi. Bernadette Peters did get a nomination also for an Emmy Award. Rita Moreno won, but Bernadette Peters did get the nomination. The guest stars, so amazing, lending their talents. They would be introduced in the show, and depending on what they did, they would be singing, performing, doing sketches. Peter Sellers had a distinction that he never appeared as Peter Sellers. He appeared as a variety of different characters. And it was explained to Kermit that Peter Sellers doesn't really exist anymore because he was surgically removed. Let's see. I'm thinking of all the zany bits right now. That's what's flowing through my head. Swedish Chef, Pigs in Space, Veterinary Hospital, Rolf doing poems. We had, the backstage antics. Bear on Patrol, which was Fozzie Bear. It's funny when you're looking back and smiling and you're just thinking of all the different guest stars. Milton Berle doing vaudeville with Fozzie Bear. The whole stage for the Muppet Show looked like a classic vaudeville theater. And then you had the backstage segments where you could see what was going on behind the scenes. You can see earlier on in earlier episodes, you'd be introduced to the guest star where they would be in their dressing room and the character Scooter would knock on the door and say 15 seconds to air, Mr. or Miss so-and-so. And that's how they would have their bit. Later on, the guest stars would come to the stage door and there would be Pops, the doorman, and there'd be some sort of shtick there. Always present in the balcony was Statler and Waldorf, who were often heckling the show. So they were always in the opening. They always would have the last word at the end of the show, unless you want to count the character Zoot playing that off note on his saxophone. One of the things, especially as a kid when I saw this first time, I was just amazed to see the audience. You had an audience of Muppets that they would be applauding also in the opening credits. They're the ones who sang, "Why don't you get things started?" I mean, it was pretty overwhelming that they could do that. There were characters from Sesame Street that did cross over and have their cameos, which was always a lot of fun. Cross things over very nicely. And the show had a very successful run. From there, we got the Muppet movies and then many others that followed. But I do want to give proper credit to some of the puppeteers on the show. I already mentioned Frank Oz, who worked a lot with Jim Henson throughout his entire career. I believe they worked together when it was Sam and Friends. And that's where Kermit the Frog was first introduced to the American television viewing public. But the character of Rolf was actually there before Kermit made his debut. So Rolf is actually, unless you want to count Sam, it's actually predates Kermit by some time. So we have Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Jerry Nelson, who Sesame Street fans will probably know him best as Count Von Count, Richard Hunt, David Goetz, Steve Whitmore, Fran Brill, Aaron Uxer, Louise Gold, Karen Muller, Karen Prell, Brian Mule, Bob Payne, and John Lovelady. I hope I got all the names right. So many of these performers were doing the Muppet Show, which was done in the UK. And they were doing Sesame Street at the same time. So Sesame Street was done in Queens, and the Muppet Show was done in the UK. It is hard to believe, looking back, and this is just, hindsight being 2020, very hard to believe, but even after the Muppets Valentine Show and the Muppet Show Sex and Violence, Jim Henson was using those shows to sell an idea to one of the three major networks. They could not get that. Those two specials aired on ABC, but they could not sell the show to one of the networks. So ITC from the UK, you always remember that the show would open with their logo. They were able to make a deal with them and have the show be shown internationally. CBS-owned stations in the United States were airing the show in first-run syndication, and that's how we in the States got to see the show, the show that we knew and the show that we grew up with. But it was funny, it was silly, it was irreverent. Just the guest stars interacting with the Muppets is also something that you really do believe that these are real characters. I do want to address the one, Snuffleupagus in the room as opposed to Elephant in the Room. The shows are now streaming on Disney Plus. There are 18 episodes that have a disclaimer because of the certain content in the show. I feel that younger generations seeing that were not around seeing the show when they first aired needed that disclaimer. I have always been of the school that we shouldn't judge things from another time period by our current standards, but such is the world of broadcasting. If you have thoughts on that particular topic, I definitely would like to hear them in the comments. I hope that they're respectful and they are something that would be productive. I also want to hear your thoughts and comments on the Muppet Show in general, your favorite characters, your favorite bits. There is now a section of the Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, where coincidentally a lot of early movie making began, where Sesame Street has their studios in Astoria, New York. They do have a section that's dedicated to the Muppets. That will be a permanent display. There have been tours of Jim Henson's Muppets across the United States. They were at the Getty here not that long ago. Also, since I do live in Hollywood, the old Chaplin Studios is now the Jim Henson Studios. So, so much of his work is still alive and well. And not to seem morbid, I mean, again, I said it's kind of hard to believe that he left us over 30 years ago. If you ever want to see such a beautiful assembly of the talented people that Jim Henson was surrounded by, and want to have some laughs and tears, go on YouTube and find Jim Henson's memorial service, because you will be laughing and crying, and I am not exaggerating. Yeah, the legacy of Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, Gonzo, Fozzie Bear, all the other Muppets are very much alive and well. There have been other incarnations of the characters, and of course the famous Muppet Theater, which of course was owned by Scooter's uncle, in TV specials, other spin-off shows. Of course, the Muppet movie gives their origin story, and then later on we had the Muppets, which also featured the famous theater. So many laughs. Like I said, I'm talking about it, and as I'm talking, the images of so many episodes, so much shtick, so many laughs out loud. Both here at Disney California Adventure and in Walt Disney World, they do have Muppet Vision in 3D, which is a wonderful way to kind of experience being in the audience of the Muppet Show. A lot of inside jokes there as well. Yeah, it's kind of hard to contain the legacy of Jim Henson just, to that show, because your mind starts branching out to all the other amazing things he did. But again, I want to hear your comments about the Muppet Show, about who your favorite puppeteer or your favorite Muppet, who they were. Thoughts, comparison, contrast between the Muppets, Sesame Street, and of course Fraggle Rock. And again, you can hear me on TV Confidential, a radio talk show about television. You can read my blog, Childhood Television, childhoodtelevision.com. Usually I close like this, which is, by the way, Dave Garraway's sign off from the Today Show. But for some reason, in honor of Kermit the Frog, I just want to go, hey! So stay tuned.